Hi, I'm EXO, and it's another story today. I apologize, I haven't had a lot of content about the PAX lately. I've been recovering from a very long weekend and a lot of other things going on, including getting Exodus version 6 ready for release sometime in the next few weeks, hopefully. While I was heading back here, my daughter asked me what I was doing. I told her, and she said, "Oh, well, if you're going to tell stories, tell them about Chuck E. Cheese." So when I was 20 years old, um, I was always on AOL Instant Messenger, and there used to be a random chat button, and you could hit that button, and it would just anyone else that had random chat turned on AIM, you could talk to them. I got to talking to this girl that lived up in Philadelphia, and she was really into Rammstein, which is a German band I liked, and so we got common ground now, and we talked for months. And back then, a digital camera was not very common. Scanners were not very common. So we never traded pictures. We didn't know what each other looked like. The short of it, to fast forward, is we finally did trade pictures. And I moved to Philadelphia pretty quickly thereafter. And when I got there, I needed to get a job. So I'm applying to different offices. I'm looking for computer tech jobs because that's easy for me. And at some point, I see a help wanted sign for a technical manager at a Chuck E. Cheese. I don't know what that is. I figure I'll go apply anyway. So I get there and there's two quizzes. And one of them is a logic test, like, if this, then that, what's this? And the other one was a electronics test, like circuitry, capacitors. Um, a little bit of soldering was involved, if I remember correctly. Not, you didn't have to solder yourself, but it asked you about like how you would do this or that. Mechanical questionnaire. Uh, the so I did amazing on the logic test, and I completely bombed the mechanical test. I'd never worked on electronics at that point in my life. But the guy came out and he goes, "You know what? If you can figure out the logic stuff that well, I got a whole room back there full of tools and manuals. I'm sure you can figure out the technical parts too. You're hired. Just wear a pop collar shirt so that you can hide that neck tattoo. You can't have any visible tattoos at Chuck E. Cheese." So I'm like, all right, I guess I work for Chuck E. Cheese now. What does that entail? Well, the easy part was fixing arcade games. I'd come in at 6 in the morning, the Chuck E. Cheese opened at 10 a.m., and I just wanted to make sure that all the redemption machines had tickets in them. There was no gum in the quarter. Like, they still took quarters back then, I think. Or, no, I'm sorry, it was tokens by that time. It still wasn't the card, though, where you just had a card that had like a number of plays on it. You traded your cash or you ran your card. It spit out a bucket of tokens, and you would carry your bucket around with you as a kid, shove your tokens in the machines. Um, so the other part of my job was to work on the animatronics that played in the band. There were different models of Chuck E. Cheese. If you go to one these days, I don't know if they have any animatronics left in them. There was a while there where they had one. It was just Chucky, and then the band was on screens around him. When I was growing up, there was, and there's better videos about this stuff, so I'm not going to go into the full history of it. But there was like a, what was it, Showbiz Pizza. They had a bunch of bears. But it was about having a lot of animatronics. So this was an older model. They called it a C store, I think, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've spoken Chuck E. Cheese lingo. But the short of it is, in the middle, you had Chucky. You had Munch on the keyboards, I think. You had a girl that was a bird. I can't think of her name. She had a guitar, I think. Oop, my light just went out. And there was a dog, I think. There was like five characters basically on the stage, and I can't remember all of them at this point anymore, unfortunately. Plus, my son is really, really into Five Nights at Freddy's, so a lot of the names and stuff now I've got all jacked up. Like I'm thinking Five Night characters, not the original Chuck E. Cheese duo people. Pasquale, he was the pizza guy. He was up there. He's like just an Italian guy with a little chef hat. Munch was like the purple imaginary guy. I want to say there was a dog, a bird, and Chucky, and then the other two. I think that was the five. Anyway, the puppets were pneumatic powered, so they were air powered. You blow air in the tube, and it would cause the little gate to open or close. And if it was open, it would cause something to up or down or move left or right. And you didn't have, like, we're not talking high fidelity here. It was pretty limited. You could do like an eyebrow up and down, mouth open and closed, an ear wiggle. Um, the arm usually did like one thing. Chucky definitely had the most point of articulation on him, but he was also the most prone to break down because of that. And so generally it came down to fixing air holes. The air would blow a hole somewhere or come loose, and so you get in there and you either glue it together or replace the tube, and then he would be working again. One morning I came in and he had a lot of problems. So we have a diagnostics remote control back then, and you could stand outside in front of the stage and you could hit buttons to check the lights, to move the puppets around, to check that you could just go through the motions, and you had like a multi-point checklist to make sure the puppets were doing what they were supposed to be doing up there. So since I was there at 6 in the morning, I usually ate lunch like at 10:30, 11. We've only been open for about an hour at that point. And I'm gone by 2. So I'm not dealing with a lot of birthday parties. I'm not dealing with a lot of kids. I'm just literally walking around making sure things are working. And my whole goal would be to work on puppets or animatronics from 6 to 10. And if they were done, then move to the arcade. But you need them working before the party starts. And then whatever time I had to work, and from the time that party started until my shift was over, I would just go work on games. And that usually meant giving a lot of tokens to little kids away, or, reaching in there and hitting the free play button, like, the add credit button like 30 times and be like, all right, guys, have fun. Just here, I need to check. There used to be an old arcade game that you like had a hose and you had to put out fires. And I remember we had that one, and the hose would act up sometimes. So I'd have to get in there and replace the little camera, the infrared reader light in that. I think the light was inside the hose, and there was a camera on the system, and it almost like the way the Wii worked, and it could see where the light was pointing. A lot of cleaning on that. So I'd pump in like 30 credits and hand it to 2 kids and just watch them play. Because I got to the point where I'd played the game so many times I was done with it. We had a little like remote control train that would derail all the time, so I had to like take the whole case off, put the train back on the tracks, get all the little things fixed, put the case back on, then a kid could walk over and put a token in, and the train would go around and inside again until eventually it derailed. Well, on this particular day, I got to work, and Chucky was, he had seen better days. He was not going to be ready for parties that day. So we shut the stage down, and luckily we didn't have a party until 1. So I was just kind of back behind the curtains working. And I finished what I was doing, but I still had one issue. The ear on Chucky that would go forward, there was a leak up there. Now, there were 2 kinds of leaks on a pneumatic animatronic, generally. One of them was, it's full-blown leak. The air goes, whoosh, and nothing happens because it's too big of a hole. Then there's a pin leak, and in that case, it would still do what it was supposed to do, but it would let out this squealing noise, like escaping air coming out of a balloon or something. That's the kind of issue we had on the ear that day. So I figure, okay, I'm going to eat. When I'm done eating, I'll have enough time to get up there. I'll patch the ear. Just in time, boom, party starts at 1, I'll be done. So I'm sitting there eating, and this kid keeps walking over the curtains and like pulling the curtains aside to try to see Chucky. And one of the people that works there comes over and is like, hey, please leave don't touch the curtains. Because if they mess with the curtains, it can derail them off the motor, and then it causes the whole show to mess up. And you really don't want kids climbing up on the stage and messing with the animatronics, because that'll really screw them up. Like, these are pretty fragile for as constant use as they were in. They didn't stand. They needed a lot of maintenance. At least our location did. He keeps going over there, keeps going over there, keeps going over there. Finally, he goes under the curtain, and now he's up inside there with all the puppets. And I can see his feet, so I know where he's standing, but I know that I look around, and nobody else that works there notices his feet down there, so they don't see him up in there. And I'm like, oh, all right, what do I do? And I look over, and on the table next to me is a remote control that I can use to diagnose the puppets on the stage. Well, there was one button, and it was basically it was a button you could use to test all the joints at the same time. And so I hit this button, and I go to the lights, and I hit the red button. All the red spotlights come on behind the curtain, and Chucky leans forward, hands, like the whole thing comes forward, mouth open, agape. It made everything flex open, so it blew air through every tube at the same time to check them all. And of course, the ears were supposed to flip forward too, because they started here, but when you gave them air, they would flip forward. So imagine, if you will, a small child is behind a curtain, screwing around, messing with some animatronic they're not supposed to. They've been told multiple times not to go back there. And then suddenly, red lights, this massive 4 foot tall thing that's standing on top of a 2 foot tall stage in front of you, leans over, and then the coup de grace is you hear, and this horrible noise comes blaring out of his broken ear. This kid flies up from under the curtain, hauls ass back to his family, and did not mess with the curtain again after that. And I tried not to choke up my cardboard pizza that I was eating for lunch because, hey, I got to eat free food as long as I ate their food. So I ate a lot of bad pizza because it was, when you're working, I won't say how much I made there because I don't remember, but it wasn't great money. And I wasn't going to spend a whole hour's worth of my money buying a Subway sandwich down the way or whatever else was in the area. It's hard to remember now. There wasn't a lot out there. It was like, I think it was in Buck County, Pennsylvania. It was like outside of Philadelphia. I had to drive almost an hour every day. Maybe it was 45 minutes to get to this place from where I lived in Philly. Anyway, it's one of my favorite stories to tell when things like that come up. And with the proliferation of stories that have come from like Five Nights at Freddy's, I once had a friend posit, I wonder if that kid grew up and made that series. I'm pretty positive Scott Cawthorn was not the kid behind the thing. I think he's much older than that. We're not that far in age. But it is funny to think that somewhere out there is a kid telling a very similar story, but it's from his perspective. And Five Nights gets really big, and he's like, no, seriously, one time I was at a Chuck E. Cheese, and Chucky came to life, and he squealed at me, and the lights turned red. And all his friends like, yeah, whatever, we don't believe you. I hope you enjoyed my story for the day. Thanks for watching. Bye.